today we got a 350 Legend that somebody gave me to sight in for them, and then I guess before that, get the scope level. Basically, remount the scope and sight it in for them. I do these people's rifles every year. This is something their son bought them. So, people are good to work with. They know who I am and stuff, so I don't necessarily do it for everybody, but I like this because it gives me some experience on some other rifles that I would never have experience with if I had to buy them myself, I guess. So this is a 350 Legend. It's made by Savage. I believe it's the Axis. And that's about it. It's not anything fancy. Doesn't really need to be either. So I didn't even look it up. I don't know a whole lot about it. I would say it's got an 18-inch barrel on it, probably. I doubt that's 20. But this is your standard Savage rifle. I do not know if he's ever shot it. The rifle is empty, and I got I'm gonna guess a 2 or a 3 round box detachable magazine. A Weaver scope. It's got the duplex reticle on it. 3 to 9 variable. So I figured I'd make this video to kind of show you guys what I do when I get these rifles. I do a couple of these a year, not a ton. So, and this is pretty much my process on a lot of this. It does change a little bit from gun to gun, but this came bore sighted from the factory or from the place he bought it from. I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna look through that barrel and see if it's ever been shot. Yeah, he could have cleaned it, of course, but I don't see any fouling. So at this point, I do not know. But what I'll do with every build I get, I will tear the gun off of the stock or chassis, dismantle the scope, rings, and mounts, and I will clean everything. I usually clean out the rifle. We kind of make sure everything is as it should be before we start. So I'll take all this off. I'll make sure all the screws are tight to the trigger assembly, and then make sure that the action bolts or takedown bolts, whatever you want to call them, are tight. When I reassemble it, of course, I use a little bit of blue Loctite to medium strength, just for some extra security. I'll just check a bunch of stuff, so I'm not going to necessarily videotape that. I'll fast forward all of that, but just so you guys know what I am doing, you'll be able to see it. When I go back to scope leveling, I'll probably slow it down and explain my process. Kind of do that for you guys. So that's what I'll start with. Alright, so I just went through and I applied a light coat of oil to underneath the stock. Usually that will get missed because it's hard to get to. So I like to start with that, get some oil set down there, wipe down underneath the barrel and all that. Now I'm tightening these up. I got a little bit of Loctite on them. Now I've got this fat wrench. This is the Wheeler scope leveling kit that came with the fat wrench. I've got it set at 35 inch-pounds right now, and I'm going to bump it up to 60, which is the max this wrench will go. This is not a high recoiling rifle. Like I said, the fat wrench can actually go above 60. But anyways, I'll put it to 60 inch-pounds. This is what I do on all my rifles typically. And that is to ensure, per se, it was a heavy recoil where you drop it a lot, this and that. It does not come off the bedding block. So this is what I do. I'm not entirely sure what manufacturer ratings are set at. This is something I've always done though. All my guns, and I have great success with all of them. So now you're gonna get a big flathead screwdriver and get into that. I'm not a big fan of these rings, but it is what it is. So with those down, I'm going to take the entire scope completely off. I already shouldered the rifle and I could tell the scope was crooked, which will affect your elevation and windage adjustments. So we'll set that there. Now I got some Torx, maybe some 35s, I don't know yet. Alright, so T20s. Take that off. A lot of rifles I've seen that I have bought, when I take these off or say they're used, or I just didn't go through and clean them like I do now, underneath those mounts, they will be rust, and I can see some rust on just one of the threads here, but there was probably oil there, but I'm not entirely sure who did what, when they set the rifle up. But I'll take some of this off these Elite gun oil, and I'll just put a light coat. And I'm not worried about getting on the stock because I'll wipe everything down when I'm done. Kind of get that all cleaned up, because it's a little bit harder to get it all here when the scope's mounted, so I'll wipe the whole barrel down. We will be touching it slightly though, so I'll re-wipe it. But so I started that all oiled. Now look at these. And I will wipe these out and down as well. Now these are steel. That's a good thing to see, because sometimes some gun manufacturers will do aluminum on steel, whatever. Their expansion rates are different in different temperatures, or I guess their expansion rates are different in the same temperature really, but it's something to keep in mind when you're buying a scope mount and bases, rings, all that stuff. Try to keep everything the same material, same. If it's a 70-75 aluminum, try to keep everything 70-75 aluminum. That has anything to do with your scope. Just for the ultimate accuracy, the ultimate precision, I should say. I like Loctiting these in. Do it on every gun, even my pellet gun, especially the pellet gun, I guess, because that thing has a lot of vibration for it, for what it is. These already do have some Loctite in them, so that's good. You do not want to be in a rush while doing this. I like to take my time, make sure I have a clear head. Nothing's really getting to me in a hurry. So I got them all snugged down. I'm going to set them to probably 30 inch-pounds. Typically that's what I see, but what I like to do is I'll put them to 15 first. Pretty much whenever I set anything in, I always go half first. And then I will go back and finish it. I don't know why I do that, I just do it. So I don't know. And I don't feel the screws stretching, nothing like that at all. I mean, everything feels like it can handle it. I want to say they're probably even tighter than that to start with. They were pretty tight. So Now we know we're sitting on a good base. That's a very important thing to establish. So while we have these pads up here, this scope kit comes with some levels, and I typically don't use them, just because they're plastic. So I'll show you what I do have. I bought this. This is an add-on to this kit, also from Wheeler Manufacturing. I got my piece of ground steel there, but I have an aluminum level with a magnet in it. And I just don't like the plastic. I feel like there's too many things that can go wrong with it. Maybe I'm overthinking it all. What I'll try to do is get this set parallel to the barrel. I don't want to turn at a 45 or like that. It's going to start changing the coaxial movement, so to speak, I guess. But now I want to make sure the rifle's level this way. It's not crazy important, really, but it's just one of those things I like to do. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it my way. This is how I'm going to do it. I don't typically lock the rifles down. I'm going to try it this time just to see if I'm going to regret it. Because I don't really like this sled, but that's all I have. I do have plans to buy a much better sled at some point. So anyways, the bubble's reading level. I can reset off my screen, come back down to it, and it's still in the level position. I'm going to call that good. Now we're going to check this way. And I'm going to go up against a flat, a milled slot there in the rail, or in the mount. I'm going to let that, line that level up just with that. That way I know I'm sitting as parallel as I can to it, or not parallel, but perpendicular to it. I'm going to turn the rifle so I get that bubble just in the center. I'm trying hard not to lean on my table because that does affect it a little bit. So right there we got a perfect reading of level. Now in this kit, pull this out, and this is my barrel clamp level. Put this right on the end, try not hard enough to move the rifle. Now I don't have to worry about this thing really being level right off the bat, because I got the adjustment screw right here. I'm watching that level, making sure this rifle hasn't moved on me, which so far it hasn't. Keep on screwing this out until I get my bubble right in the level between the two lines there. Okay, right there it's good. Now what I like to do, just because I'm weird, is I'll take everything and I'll just mix it all up again because I just want to test them. Put the first one back. I know it's on a flat surface, so we want to read that one. That one's good, that one's good. So now I verified they're both reading correctly because sometimes bubbles can get stuck. I've seen that enough on the job site and construction. So put that one back in the case. We can rely on this one now for our cant of the rifle. From there, I will take these rings off the scope, and we will take the scope off obviously, and we will clean under there a little bit, and I will fast forward that just to speed up some time on this video. Alright, so I just got all that off. Turns out I did not hit record on that, so my time lapse was for nothing. Now I'm going to, it's a little bit of oil. Now this is aluminum, you know, it shouldn't really, it's not going to rust, but it's one of those things like to get some of that residue from the tape off and all that. Because these rings here have some kind of like a, I don't know if it's a shock absorbing tape or what they do, why they do that, if it's to keep it from scooting around or not. So this particular rifle, I am not going to lap the rings. I always lap rings except for today. The reason why I'm not is because these are not worth lapping. They are too cheap of a metal, too cheap of a cost even, really. And so I actually discussed this with the owner first. I'm not just not doing it because I just don't care. I talked to him about it a little bit, said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. So we did work it out. I told him what I was going to do. I like to take these screws and put them towards the other side. I know you're supposed to probably have them here, but I don't really care. I keep them here because I don't like having them in my way when I'm lifting that bolt, catching on my fingers there. So I'm going to work the nut off, put a grab of Loctite on the threads. Throw that on. Set that up to not get it tight yet. You want to take these and you want to push them forward. There's not a whole lot of wiggle, but you want to keep them forward. It's for the recoil so they don't move on you. So I'll push it forward, tighten them down. Now I'll grab my fat wrench. And I'm going to set this to 20 right now. 20 inch-pounds, while keeping forward pressure on them. Now I'm going to bump it to 30, I'm going to call it good right there. Usually I see about 33 is kind of like the absolute max. Like I can feel these wanting to stretch on me, so I don't want to strip them out. It's a lot of weight for this cheaper stuff. Threads don't last as long, but we want it tight still. 20 inch-pounds with the Loctite will probably be just fine, but I like to go for the max. So now we got our scope, and where he had it was where his eye relief was great, so I can already see where it marked. Now typically if I don't have that, which I did not know I would have that until I took the scope rings off and seen it, I'll go back and get a black Sharpie and I will make a little mark so I can line the scope back up with these. And if it's a full Picatinny rail, I'll mark where these are at as well, but although that doesn't necessarily matter as much. When I'm setting a rifle scope up, I'm looking for the most grab, so I want these rings to be out as far as they can on the scope to hold as much of the scope as possible. You don't want them up here, you want them out here. So, that being said, we'll get some of these screws started down. We'll grab a Loctite on them as well. I'm going to have to break this barrel in, and I do not have enough ammunition to do that, so that was something we talked about as well, and he said just to get it sighted in. So we are not looking to do a proper clean out procedure, even though I think a gun of this caliber, with quality of it, which I do like Savages. Most Savage rifles I really have grown to appreciate the little things about them, but I would like to do a barrel break-in, but it looks like we are not going to do it this time when I go take it to the range. So I'm carefully running the screws down. We're not tightening, we're not even snugging. Just running them down. And I'm careful not to tighten one side more than the other because I want even gaps on these rings, the top rings, on both sides of the scope. Now we don't pinch and run one side out first. We want an even clamp, so to speak. Right now I got my fat wrench set to 10 inch-pounds. We're not even going to that. So, that being said, I want to be able to take the scope and still move it. I'm going to line it up with where he had it previously. And then we're going to level the scope. Now this is where I feel a lot of people get this wrong, is you do not want to put a bubble level on top of your cap. Because these caps aren't always machined perfectly, and I know on a scope of this quality they're definitely not. So we're not even going to do that. What I will have is a plumb bob set downrange. Plumb bob is the most accurate way because it has gravity pulling it straight down. Nothing can affect it unless the string has contact on something else, which even then, at the bottom of that plumb plumb bob, it should still be perfectly straight. So I will take this little cord that I cut from something, and I'll attach, I usually take the ball for knurling, I shouldn't say knurling, for lapping the rings. I'll tie it around this, that'll be my weight to pull the string down. That's typically all I'm going to need. So I'm going to go hang this up downrange, and we'll look at it through the scope and get it set. Alright, so I got my plumb bob down there. I waited for it to settle a little bit because it's still swinging. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'll grab the rifle here. And my bubble level on the barrel still says I'm level, so that's important. With that being level, I'm going to rotate the scope to the crosshairs, line up with that string. It'll be totally hidden from you. And double check my bubble. That still reads good. Okay, I like that a lot. Bubble level's still great. So now we're gonna slowly and carefully tighten these down so I've seen these scopes move. Now if you pay attention to my level on top of the turret, I do not know if you can see this, but it's reading not level. Bubble's all the way over there on the far end. So I'll bring you up in there real quick here. That's why we don't ever level off those. I have a plumb bob hanging down on that little thing over there, that shelving unit. So now we know why we do what we do. I'm gonna very carefully turn this tight. I'm just doing, I don't even know if it's an eighth of a turn, each one. I've had to do this a couple of times on some rifles. You do not want to rush it. Your range time will thank you when you can hit your bullseyes and your calculations come out correct because of your reticle being perfectly aligned. And I'm checking my gaps between the two, the top and the bottom rings, making sure that we are both the same. So I just hit my 10-inch pounds. Now I'm going to re-level the rifle. We just stayed in there. I'm going to check back through the reticle, make sure nothing moved on me. Okay, perfect. Nothing moved. So now I'm going to put this up to 15. And I'm at 18. I'm going to leave it at 18 inch pounds. And that's what we're going to call it good. Most scopes are anywhere from 18 to 20, 22 maybe. And I talked to Vortex, and the most frequent problem they have is people over tightening their scopes and destroying them. That's where most of their warranty work comes from, is people that don't have tools like this and they just tighten things down. And I used to do that all the time myself. It's really hard not to still want to do that, to be honest. Anyways, now the scope is true, right with the world. The parallax is set where he likes it. I'm happy with how it looks to the string. I'm going to clean up the barrel. Just run a swab through there. It's not really dirty. We're gonna swab through there, clean it out. I'm gonna wipe everything down with oil, all the barrel stuff, wipe off the stock, and just try to get some of the oil smudges I left down there off. Then the next up, we take it to the range and we'll sight it in at 100 yards and see if we can get a 1 minute of angle accuracy out of this rifle without breaking it in properly.